My name is Laura, and I'm a single mom to a wonderful 18-year-old son, Ethan. Raising him alone hadn't been easy, but we'd always had a close bond. Ethan was in his last year of high school, and his small group of friends had practically grown up in our home. Over the years, I'd watched them transform from mischievous boys to young men, each one carving out their path in the world. Among them was Ryan, my son's best friend since kindergarten. Ryan had always been polite, respectful, and a little quieter than the rest of Ethan's friends. He had a quick wit that often caught me off guard, and he was always the first to help around the house when the boys hung out here. That summer, Ethan had invited a few friends over for a pool day. I didn't mind. I loved having the house full of laughter and energy, even if it sometimes made me feel out of place. I was the cool mom, as they liked to joke, always ready to whip up snacks or join in their fun. That day was especially hot. The kind of heat that made the pavement unbearable and left everyone clamoring for shade. I had spent most of the morning preparing drinks and snacks, making sure everything was perfect for Ethan and his friends. Around noon, Ethan and the group arrived, tossing their bags onto the patio and diving straight into the pool. "Mom, you should join us," Ethan called, splashing water in Ryan's direction. I hesitated. It had been a while since I'd joined them in the pool. Most of the time, I was content to sit on the sidelines with a book, but the idea of cooling off was tempting. "All right, but only for a little while," I said, grabbing my towel. The water was perfect, and soon, I found myself laughing along with the boys as we played water volleyball. Ryan, as always, was a little more reserved, but his quick comebacks kept everyone entertained. After a while, Ethan and the others decided to head inside to grab more drinks and snacks, leaving Ryan and me alone in the pool. I didn't think much of it at first. Ryan had always been like another son to me. "So, Ryan," I said, treading water, "excited about your plans after graduation?" He shrugged, his expression thoughtful. "Kind of. It's scary, though. Feels like everything's changing so fast." I nodded, understanding his sentiment. "It's normal to feel that way. But trust me, you'll figure it out. You've got a good head on your shoulders." He smiled, his gaze meeting mine. "Thanks, Mrs. Harper. You've always been supportive. More than most adults I know." His words caught me off guard, but I brushed it off, thinking he was just being polite. "Well, someone has to balance out your dad's constant nagging, right?" I joked, knowing he and his father didn't always see eye to eye. Ryan laughed, but there was something different in his demeanor. A tension I couldn't quite place. He swam closer, his movements slow and deliberate. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Of course," I replied, leaning against the edge of the pool. Ryan hesitated, looking down at the water as if searching for the right words. "You've always been like, I don't know, a safe space for me. Someone I can talk to without feeling judged." I smiled warmly. "I'm glad you feel that way. You're a good kid, Ryan. You've got a bright future ahead of you." The conversation should have ended there, but the look in his eyes made me feel uneasy. It wasn't the innocent admiration of a teenager. It was something deeper, something that made my pulse quicken in a way I couldn't explain. Before I could process what was happening, Ethan and the rest of the boys burst back onto the patio, their loud laughter breaking the tension. Ryan quickly swam to the other side of the pool, the moment passing as if it had never happened. The rest of the day went on without incident, but I couldn't shake the strange feeling that lingered. Ryan had always been respectful, but that moment in the pool had felt different. Over the next few weeks, I noticed small changes in his behavior. He seemed to find excuses to stay behind after the group had left, offering to help clean up or lingering in the kitchen while I made dinner. His compliments, once casual, now felt more pointed. "You look nice today, Mrs. Harper," he'd say, his tone earnest. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Ryan was a good kid, and I didn't want to read too much into his actions. But the unease persisted, and I found myself creating distance whenever he was around. One afternoon, Ethan asked if Ryan could stay over to work on a school project. I hesitated, but it felt unfair to punish Ryan for something I wasn't even sure was real. That evening, as I cleaned up the kitchen, Ryan appeared in the doorway. "Need any help?" he asked, his hands shoved into his pockets. "No, I've got it," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the counter, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Mrs. Harper," he began, his voice steady, "can I be honest with you?" I froze, gripping the dish towel in my hands. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my tone light. He took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. "I know this might sound crazy, but I think I have feelings for you." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My heart raced as I struggled to process what he had just said. "Ryan," I began, my voice trembling, "you're a great kid, but this isn't appropriate." "I know," he said quickly, his expression earnest. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel. You're amazing, Mrs. Harper. You've always been there for me, and I—" "Stop," I interrupted, my tone firm. "Ryan, you're like a son to me. This can't happen." He looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "It's okay," I said, softening my tone. "But this conversation stays between us, all right? Nothing good can come from this." He nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I understand." From that day on, Ryan kept his distance. He still came around with Ethan, but the easy camaraderie we once shared was gone. I never told Ethan about what happened, and Ryan never brought it up again. Looking back, I realize how easily a single moment can shift the dynamics of a relationship. Ryan was just a young man trying to navigate confusing emotions, and while his feelings were misplaced, I couldn't fault him for being honest. That summer taught me the importance of boundaries, of recognizing when lines are being crossed and addressing them before they blur. It wasn't an easy lesson, but it was one I'll never forget. 4 weeks after that incident, I couldn't shake the uneasiness that lingered. Ryan's confession replayed in my mind, each word carrying a weight I hadn't expected. I kept reminding myself that he was young, and his emotions, though misplaced, were a result of confusion and admiration. But the guilt of knowing what had transpired ate at me. Ethan didn't notice anything unusual. At least, not at first. He was busy with his final year of school and plans for college, completely absorbed in the whirlwind of exams, applications, and social events. But Ryan's demeanor had changed. Where he once greeted me with his usual easygoing smile, he now avoided eye contact, barely acknowledging me when he came over. It was clear he was embarrassed, and part of me hoped that his silence meant he was moving past whatever feelings he thought he had for me. I kept my distance, staying upstairs or finding reasons to be out of the house when the boys were around.